Welcome back to the Barcablog Podcast. Whether you came back after week one or just joining us for the first time, we're glad you've joined us. Dan Hilton here, and I am joined, as always, by Francesc Tomas. And while there is only one match left to play for FC Barcelona this season, we have plenty to talk about. We have a packed show today, Francesc.
It's very exciting today. Obviously, bad news over the weekend, but we're here to unpick it.
Francesc, we want to get right into it with our first listener question, and this one involves the prior week in La Liga. Do you want to take the honors of asking the first question?
Yeah, well, basically, it's whether Barca deserved to win La Liga or not. And they did, really, unfortunately. Barca were horrendous, playing against the so-called minor teams. We've got defeats against Alaves, Deportivo, and Malaga. And those 9 points that slipped away cost us the title, really. I know that a lot of people would argue that the referee mistakes against Betis, Malaga, and Villarreal played a big part, but ultimately, I don't believe in the excuse culture that some people tend to have, particularly in Catalonia these days. And although referees obviously did make mistakes, and they seem to be always favouring the same type of teams, which is Barca and Madrid, and in this case Madrid, I just don't believe that we can say that referees stole La Liga away from Barca. The team was just not regular enough. They played quite well against the so-called top teams, getting 10 wins and only 4 worse results against Atletico, Sevilla, Valencia, Real Sociedad, Villarreal, and obviously Real Madrid. But ultimately, we just didn't cut it when we had to. And the title went to Madrid fully deservedly.
Yeah, and see, where I think Barcelona, of course, they had the team that should have been winning Liga again this year. But to me, Francis, I think it comes down to, I don't want to view Barcelona not winning La Liga and seeing that as a triumph or failure based on Real Madrid's success, we'll say, in the Champions League. As in, if Real Madrid just wins La Liga and loses the Champions League, I think Barcelona fans, of course, feel like that's more of a victory. And it's very difficult, I think, for Cules to separate the success or failures of Barcelona with the success or failures of Real Madrid. They're so loosely tied, as in, if Real Madrid wins Champions League, then Barcelona should have won the Champions League. You know, it's just a matter of, if Real Madrid were to get the double this year, I think that's what makes it feel like even more of a failure than, let's say, the year that Atletico Madrid won La Liga.
Yeah, and I think that Barca fans have to grow up in that respect. There's been too many years in which Barca have been looking at what Madrid have been doing. And ultimately, that's a loser's mentality. What we need to do is concentrate on our own team. We need to make sure that we do our best in every competition. And don't worry about Madrid all the time. If we hadn't messed up in the away games in both the knockout stages in the Champions League, we probably would still be in it. And I don't really care if Madrid are winning or not. I worry about my team, and my team just didn't perform when they needed to.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it, and it's such a slim margin, and I think that's the difficulty to it, where when you're in the Bundesliga or you're in Serie A and you really just have Munich or Juventus, they do not necessarily coast to the title seemingly in the last 5-6 years, but they really do. But when it comes to Barcelona and Real Madrid, two of those other 5 or 6 elite clubs in the world, it just, I think from an outsider's perspective, where again I'm not in Spain, so I'm not part of La Liga. La Liga isn't the number one thing where I am, so in the United States, so I'm not hearing that. They say that the Liga is too top-heavy and this and this and this and that, but I think that adds some of the fight to it, where you have these 2 elite teams that you don't see 2 elite teams like that in Real Madrid, in Barcelona, in other leagues. I mean, not that the Premier League is lesser, because the Premier League, if anything, has more depth than the Liga does as far as quality of team-by-team basis, but as we've seen in La Liga, though, I mean, Malaga can get a result, Deportivo gets results, Celta Vigo, I think that people, they try to downplay that there is really no easy games in La Liga. They still, if you're Barcelona, Real Madrid, or Atletico, you're still getting every opponent's best effort every single game.
That's right. La Liga is quite a competitive competition. I would say, in terms of differences between teams, probably the English Premier League is better in that respect because there's not that much of a difference. However, the difference that's in La Liga is because, as you said, the top two teams are probably the best two teams in the world in terms of budget, in terms of players. I mean, Barca.
Atletico is not bad either. Atletico Madrid, year after year.
Yeah, definitely. And Atletico, Valencia this year have been poorer, but normally Atletico, you've got Valencia, you've got even Real Sociedad sometimes, sort of trying to push the top teams. And let's not
Bilbao.
Bilbao, and let's not forget that Sevilla have been doing really well throughout the season. Obviously,
Two Europa Leagues over the last few years.
Ultimately, what Sevilla lacked this year is depth. But if you think about January, February, there were people that were talking them up to challenge Madrid and Barca for the end of the season. So, the league has got two teams that obviously I would say are head and shoulders above the rest. And you can look at the reasoning behind it, which is the amount of money they get from TV and the huge fan base they've got within Spain and obviously worldwide. But I disagree with the fact that people that say that La Liga is not competitive. La Liga is very competitive, but there are two teams that are far better than the others.
Well, speaking of La Liga, we do want to take a quick break to thank our first sponsor, and that is, of course, Fubo TV. You can head to Barcablog.com, and if you hit on that little tab that says HD Streaming, it's a link that can take you to get an exclusive discount to watch all the Liga matches for the upcoming season. That comes at a discounted price, and the best part of it is you're also helping out the show. So again, we tell you to go to Fubo TV. And the way you do that is you head to the barcablog.com, of course, our webpage, and then you hit the HD streaming link, and then you'll get an exclusive discount to watch all La Liga matches. And that's in HD streaming quality on your computer. Well, question number 2 from the listeners today, Francesc. If Barca could sign only one player, who should that be and why? And when you sent me this question, Francesc, I absolutely love this question. And we actually had a laugh quickly before air because you asked me if I had Verratti, of course, the PSG midfielder, and I didn't put him on my list because I knew that you were going to put him on your list simply because that's the guy that I think everyone is pining for.
Definitely. Marco Verratti has to be the number one choice for the signing this summer. If there is one thing that Barca's missing right now is quality of midfield moving forward, which, to be honest, is sort of crazy to say after years of excellence with Xavi, Iniesta and Busquets in the middle. However, Xavi is, as we said last week, earning some money in Qatar while he pretends to play some football. Iniesta is, I would say, on his way out. Obviously, he has performed really well when he's been fit, but his importance within the team has decreased this year, particularly in the stretch at the end of the season. So, yeah, we need some creativity in the middle. We need someone who can learn from Iniesta in the, I would say, 2-3 seasons, if that he's got left. And Marco Verratti has all the quality. Now, he's been a professional for many, many years. He now plays for Paris Saint-Germain, and he's key in Italy. He has gotten lots of awards throughout his career. He was identified as a youngster who was one of the most promising in Europe. And he is basically bossing the midfield in both the teams that he represents. And without a doubt, at 24 years old, he's a prospect for the future that Barca should invest heavily on. So the question is, if you had to sign the one player, and I think when it comes to the one player, it has to be Verratti because of the quality that he has, the potential that he has, and his predisposition to learn from arguably the best attacking midfielder ever, which in my eyes is Iniesta.
You see, Francesc, it's hard to argue with you, and that's why I came up with 6 different options.
6 different options.
To try to combat, 5 real options, then one other option that I've come up with. And the number one I've come up with is, not to play Real Madrid's game of signing the hottest commodity, but I think it's almost a addition by subtraction in that this isn't my number one player, I'll get to that in a second, but I put Kylian Mbappe, of course, the 18-year-old French attacker, on the list simply because if Barcelona, very much I think like the Neymar signing, if Barcelona were to get his signature, that means that he's not going to any of the other top teams in the world. And I think for a guy that, I mean, 18 years old, 21 goals, 8 assists across all competitions, 15 of those coming in the French First Division. For me, Mbappe, you look at the things that he does just as a youth player, even if obviously with Neymar, Messi, Suarez right now, he would still be coming off the bench. But again, Suarez is just hitting about 30, and Mbappe in a season or two could be not only taking goal scoring appearances off the Barcelona bench, he could turn that into being that number 9 up top. I mean, maybe not a traditional Romelu Lukaku number 9, back to the goal kind of number 9, but between him and Messi and Neymar, that's the kind of speed and just I couldn't imagine the runs that would be set up 3 or 4 passes before a goal is scored. I mean, and while Suarez has done his job and again is one of the most fantastic traditional number 9s in the world, probably just behind Lewandowski of Bayern Munich, I think Mbappe is already one of those guys. But Real Madrid, of course, already throwing, it looks like 100 million euros at AS Monaco to try to secure his signature. And so I think that could be, for Barcelona, taking away his signature from Real Madrid might be an important piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, probably. I would say with Mbappe, I think if I was him, I would just stay at Monaco. And I would just learn my trade in there, grow as a confident player, and try and hold on for the money for at least another season. If he came to Barca, as you said, he wouldn't be starting. And at this stage in his development, I think the most important thing for him is to prove himself, to establish the great year that he's had, and continue to grow. Having said that, I think that before he comes to Barca or Madrid, I think he'll have a stint in England first. Players like Pogba and players that have moved to the Premiership have proven themselves. And I do see it as a step forward from Monaco. But I would say in order to succeed at Madrid or Barcelona, you have to have proved yourself elsewhere rather than Monaco at this point.
And speaking of proving elsewhere, my actual number 1 pick for this one was actually Thiago Alcantara.
Right.
He was my number 1 pick simply because I know Verratti was a good choice, but Alcantara, for the first time, really, he was almost completely healthy all season long, playing for Bayern Munich. 9 goals, 8 assists in the Bundesliga, Champions League, in the DFB Pokal. He hit 91% of his passes, which again just tells you that he has the Barcelona DNA because he was raised in the Barcelona system. And this year, not only was he fantastic offensively, as in spraying things forward and helping Bayern Munich go forward, but his defensive abilities this year were really what was showing out, and that shows the maturity in his game. And that's something that I guess you could credit Bayern Munich for helping him round out the defensive part of his skill set. But for me, Thiago Alcantara, I think he is exactly the player that Barcelona would love to have back, where he is truly a difference maker and a game changer with one pass in the very same way that, I mean, this year with Andres Iniesta, you see that there's that special quality that, and this is no slight on Denis Suarez, Rafinha, or Andre Gomez, or even Sergio Busquets or Rakitic. It's that Andre Iniesta is that guy where if he is just outside the 18, you know that you are one beautiful pass away from putting the ball in the back of the net. And I think Thiago Alcantara is now at that level where he is one of the best attacking midfielders in the entire world, yet still somehow he has that defensive ability to really help out what Bayern Munich did, whether it's as a deep-lying playmaker or moving forward. And speaking of moving forward, the other guy I had on my list was Paulo Dybala as being a serious contender, 18 goals, 7 assists. He's playing with Juventus this year. Barcelona fans got to see him up close in the Champions League. And while he was playing as a center forward a few times this year, I think that's where he's projected to play as he gets even older. Again, he's already in his early 20s, but he scored 10 goals this year from attacking midfield perspective. But for me, Francesc, the reason he wasn't my number 1, as again, fans love Dybala, think he could be the heir to Messi, as so many players have been. With Messi at his age, we see that Messi does like to slip in and play in that, basically that number 10 role. Yet Dybala, if he were to join the club, would probably have to keep Messi out on the wing, where, again, Messi, as he continues to age, is going to want to come in a little bit more and just play more centrally and not have to worry about the duties out wide.
Right. To 2 points you made in there. Let's start with Dybala first. I would say Dybala is a player that I think sooner or later will be a Barca player. I don't think it's going to be happening this season, maybe not even in 2 seasons' time, simply because we've got, in my eyes, the best front three in the world. And none of those players are going anytime soon. And same reasoning I argued earlier for Mbappe, it's for Dybala. They wouldn't be starting right now. Obviously, they would be pushing the front three more than, say, Alcácer is doing right now. But I just don't see I don't see that the first priority for Barca this summer has to be signing a forward. Having Dybala would obviously improve the team, but the amount of money that he would potentially cost the club, I don't think would be money well spent if we were only to sign one player. But definitely one for the future. Now, in terms of Thiago, this is quite a sort of Catalan thing. We don't necessarily like players who leave us. You saw the experiment of bringing Cesc Fabregas back, and bringing Cesc back really backfired because the fans sort of always thought, well, you were free for us, so you were one of our youth players. You decided to leave at 17, then you cost us a lot of money, and you didn't quite perform to the same standard. So players that leave are not always welcome with open arms at Barca. Now, Thiago would be one of them. Thiago, when he left us, could have very easily stayed. He made use of a clause, a sort of hidden dark clause in his contract to leave. I believe he cost 25 million euros for Bayern Munich at the time to leave when Guardiola took the team. So I don't really necessarily think it would be a fan favorite if he came back, at least from the start. Now, I'm not going to say he's not the ideal player for Barca. Of course, he would be great. He knows the ins and outs. His brother plays for the team, and that would be an incentive for him to come back. But I just don't see that people at the Camp Nou would welcome, say, paying more money than when he left us for a player that was initially ours.
Well, moving forward, I think I can agree with all those things. That's why, again, Verratti, you only had to mention one, and you had kind of won the argument and the debate because Verratti is the guy that everybody wants. I've got 3 more options for you, 2 serious ones, both of them being German. We've got 2 young German midfielders on my list. Joshua Kimmich, from another Bayern Munich midfielder. He's on my list because at 21 years old, his versatility. He scored 10 goals this year, and he really was never anywhere closer to the goal than just a direct center midfield position. He didn't even play attacking midfield. He was merely a center midfielder or a defensive midfielder, or he played at center back or right back. And we look at the Pep Guardiola era, that kind of versatility, and particularly at the level that Kimmich plays at. I mean, again, and he's the kind of guy that I think would just fit perfectly into what Barcelona are trying to do. However, with Kimmich, his style is more... There is not that Barcelona flair. It has a very much German, distinct, straightforward, no-nonsense style to it, very much like a Thomas Müller. I mean, they are teammates for Bayern Munich. But for Kimmich, I think where that is positive is that I think that German edge, that attitude that seems to be permeating through world football right now, I think that it would be an important piece. I mean, yes, he'd work well with Ter Stegen, of course, both being German-speaking, and particularly on that back line. But for Kimmich, I think adding that would be a positive to the Barcelona mindset. But again, the negative would be that it could backfire, and that those kind of players that don't necessarily look like they prototypically fit the Barcelona mold, they wind up oftentimes not fitting the Barcelona mold. That's why the other German I have on my list is 21-year-old defensive midfield Julian Weigl of Borussia Dortmund. I mentioned him last week. He hit 90% of his passes this year. He only had 1 goal in the Champions League, but he dictated play, and he was the reason Dortmund were able to play the way they did. And you can't tell me that Dortmund didn't play with plenty of flair, because Weigl really just was tidy. He did everything he had to, very unselfish, very much a Sergio Busquets type, and I think Weigl does have that Barcelona flair with his passes that I think he could be the heir apparent to Sergio Busquets eventually.
Yeah, I think with German players, if they've already broken into the first team in their respective clubs, then at their age, at 21, I think they should establish themselves there. Why at 21, having been given the chance to start for Bayern Munich, why would you want to leave? I just don't really see that happening. Now, I'm not saying they wouldn't adjust to our system, but Barca is all about, as you sort of are explaining. It's all about feeling, it's all about understanding the system, it's all about continuing. Now, as I said before, I am quite concerned when Iniesta leaves, what's going to happen. Who's going to take the baton? Obviously, you've got Busquets, but he's more defensive. He can build, he can create, but he's the most sort of defensive out of the Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets triangle that made us excellent and beloved around the world. So I think someone like Verratti or someone creative along those lines is what we definitely need. Now we've got Rakitic, but Rakitic has got a more sort of defensive edge to his game as well. So I think someone who can continue to be creative and continue to push forward is what we need. And as for the two very talented youngsters that you mentioned from the German league, I would think the one that's at Bayern Munich should stay, and the one in Dortmund is probably going to end up signing for Bayern Munich anyway.
As most good young Dortmund players do. Well, speaking of young Dortmund players, I have my one not serious one, Francesc, for you, and you might hear a little bit of bias in this. My pick would be Christian Pulisic. Right. And can you guess why I would pick Christian Pulisic, other than that he's American?
I've got no idea.
No, it's because he's an American. Yeah,
of course.
An 18-year-old American winger. Now, obviously, from a serious perspective, I would say that it would be detrimental to Pulisic's career if he were to go to Barcelona at this point, as most, I think, 18-year-old wingers would, particularly a guy of his ilk where he needs to become a starter for Dortmund every game, which he started over half the games this year for Dortmund as an 18-year-old. Again, he was a semifinalist. He had a fantastic game against Real Madrid, which endears him to Barcelona fans. A wonderful assist on a goal that, who was it? It was Schürrle. That's it. It was Schürrle that scored it against Real Madrid in the group stage. So for me, Christian Pulisic, as an American, I would love to see him in a Barcelona uniform, of course. That would be the quickest jersey order I've ever made. But I think at this point, as an 18-year-old, it's just not time for him yet to make a dangerous move like that. And I think even for American fans, now not to go over on a Christian Pulisic tangent, but he's even linked to Liverpool, and I think that's not even ready for him yet. I think, as you were making mention, most players that, again, aren't necessarily already Spanish-speaking and aren't from Spain and don't necessarily even know the Barcelona system, it's dangerous for players from 18 to 22 to 24 years old to make those big jumps and have to compete for time with the likes of Messi and Neymar. And it's very detrimental to their careers.
Exactly, and that's the point. It's the competing for time point that basically closes the argument. If you are going to be a starter, if you want to at one point be a starter for Barca, then you have to be a starter wherever you are in the world right now. And even if you're starting for, say, Liverpool or Juventus or any of the teams that we mentioned, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make it at Barca. Look at Arda Turan, for example. Arda Turan was a regular starter, arguably the star in Atletico Madrid, who got really far, obviously winning the league and in the Champions League as well, reaching two finals. Then he's not even in the question for arguably the fourth striker. So you have to be a proven star, and you have to have a lot of potential, and you have to have, as you said, a little bit of understanding of the system. And obviously, if you speak Spanish, then things become easier in order to have a chance of succeeding at Barca.
Well, we do want to remind people who are enjoying the podcast, not only thank you for listening, but if you want to help out the show, you can donate on our Patreon page. Of course, there's links to that on the Barcablog website that you can see. And Francesc, I think we'll keep it moving. We've talked about players outside the club, but we do want to talk about, as we hinted at last week, one of the players who plays for Barcelona, who might not have gotten the love from the Catalan fans that he maybe should have. And I think you and I think you and I might disagree on this, but at least I know that I disagree with most of Barcelona fans. The question is, has Andre Gomez really been that bad this season? My answer is no, and I'll explain it, but I do want to hear what you think first.
Right, my answer is yes. He has been. He has been as bad as people are making him to have been. Listen, when we sign a player for 35 million euros, and then we've got another 20 million euros to go on add-ons, we're expecting a little bit more. I think what's happening to Andre Gomez this season is that people haven't really understood the need for the signing in the first place. He's not a typical Barca midfielder. At 188 centimeters, which is 6 feet and 2 inches. He's tremendously tall. He doesn't necessarily fit the bill for what an attacking player at Barca is, attacking midfielder. So he looks a little bit strange within the system. He's not your typical player. He is not a playmaker as such. I don't think has the speed to zoom down the wings if needed. Think about what Iniesta does. Think about what Xavi used to do through the middle. Signing Andre Gomez was a strange choice to start. Now, having said that, he has been given a lot of chances. He's played 46 matches at Barca this season, and I think that is plenty of matches to prove his worth. He scored 3 goals, which again, for a player that has played that many matches, is not really a lot. You could argue that Iniesta doesn't score many goals either, but that's a different story. But I think he's had a lot of chances. I think Luis Enrique has proven that he believes in him from the very beginning. The Camp Nou, I think, to be honest, the Camp Nou can be very cruel at times, and he has been used as a scapegoat at times, but I think he hasn't really helped himself with his attitude to chasing players when he's dispossessed, tracking back, especially in the counter. So a lot of people in the Camp Nou are not very impressed with the player, and I think the criticism is unfair in some areas, but largely deserved.
So my thinking has always been that I don't think we should blame the player for a decision that the board makes and the way the board valued that player. So even though he'll cost a total of 55 million euros, I don't think that you should blame Andre Gomez for the price tag that Valencia put on him and that Barcelona chose to pay. I think, yes, he needs to understand there was pressure to live up to that bill, but I don't think he was actually as bad as Barcelona fans may have thought. I think, while there was, again, 3 goals, 1 assist, that's not really a big end product, but he did connect on 94% of his passes in the Champions League, and while he did have a bad game against Juventus, of course, in the first leg that we want to forget, I think he, for the rest of the other 7 appearances, was pretty fantastic as far as on the ball, astute, and again, the important thing that I think fans want to see, and while he showcased it at the Euros, and I think that was another reason why fans would have been excited prior to him coming and playing for Barcelona, at the Euro Championships last summer, he may have had 1 assist and only completed 82% of his passes, but that's in a Portugal counterattacking style. He was very tidy and intelligent with the ball, and more importantly, he made 1.6 key passes. And I know this is advanced statistics, and most Barcelona fans just want to see the eye test and say, oh, I think that play looks good or doesn't look good. Well, he had 1.6 key passes per game in the Euro, and which means that just tells me that per game he is affecting the game, that he is leading to things when he plays for Portugal. But for Barcelona this past year, he had 0.35, which just is not a very good number and a very good statistic. So I think he could be another one of those players that takes at least a year to get used to the Barcelona system. And so I think that while year 1 may have been a disappointment, I don't say sell him, I don't say give up on him, because I think that most players, particularly those in their early 20s, yes, he's 23, but I think he's still developing as a player. And I think a year through the Barcelona system, we need to give him another season just to get used to what's going on. And even for Valencia, he was never a game changer for Valencia. He had 1 goal and 2 more assists than he had this past year, so 4 goals and 4 assists in 2015-16 for Valencia, and about 600 more minutes of action. So if anything, his statistics were pretty much on par per minute with what he had at Valencia. And so for Barcelona fans to expect much more offensively, his job is to be tidy, is to stop counterattacking in the modern football game, and just to learn the system and to make sure that he gets the ball out to the wing and the playmakers. And I think he did that well enough for year 1. He just needs to do better in year 2. I absolutely agree with you on that.
Yeah, and I get your point about the impact moving forward, and the fact that I wouldn't sell him either. I think he's got a lot of potential, and having given him 46 stars this season, games played this season, then moving forward he has to stay, because otherwise you just wasted your time. You may as well have given all of that playing time to Denis Suarez and Rafinha had he not been injured at stages. But no, I think he's a player for the future. But if we analyze season 1, I for one was disappointed not throughout the whole season, but at particular key moments, I thought that, yeah, obviously the price tag is not his fault. The fact that that Luis Enrique is playing him at key matches is not his fault either. But I thought I expected more in terms of willingness, and in terms of chasing, and in terms of giving the team what Rakitic gave the team last year. He's been poorer this year, which is why Andre Gomez has played a little bit more. But I think, and another point you made, I also agree, is the fact that playing at Barca is not easy. My brother used to play for Barca when he was little in the under-13s. He was actually teammates with Andres Iniesta. And at the time, even though they were really young, all the Barca academy played the same way. And the key players at the time could do something which is not alienate the others, but looking for each other the whole time. So if you look at how the Barca first team plays right now, you've got Messi constantly looking for Neymar, constantly looking for Suarez. You've got Iniesta, who everyone looks for. You've got Busquets, who everyone looks for. But then there's the other midfielder normally on the right side, which is normally Rakitic. This season has been shared between mainly Andre Gomez and Rakitic himself, but also Rafinha and even Arda Turan at times. And that is the one position, I think, from Busquets forward that people in the team don't necessarily look for all the time. So unless you make yourself visible, unless you offer the pass, unless you open up wide, unless you call for the ball, then they're not gonna really see you, because it's the automatic pass, say, for Andres Iniesta is either moving to Messi centrally, moving back, passing it back to, say, Busquets, or having, normally would be Jordi Alba zooming on your left. The pass across, the parallel pass to the left, to the left to, say, Rakitic or Andre Gomez is not the first option in Iniesta's head. So in order to have a real impact, you need to offer yourself more, you need to make yourself visible and demand that pass. And I think that's something that Andre Gomez hasn't done so far. Having said that, can he do that moving forward? I've got faith that the staff has seen something in him that the fans probably haven't seen in the first year. But moving forward, I would keep him, give him another year, and then see where we are at the end of the summer of 2018.
So I think you and I, while we disagree on how Andre Gomez was successful this past season, I think we both agree that, again, his career is not yet pinned to failure at Barcelona, but maybe another year's time, it may be time to move on from the player.
Yeah, and see what he does next season. Next season has to be make or break for him, for Andre Gomez, but obviously for Rafinha, Turan, Arda Turan, and other players whose future, I would say, will be in the balance this summer.
Well, speaking of things that Barcelona fans probably didn't like, this one is a recent one in question number 4, and it is: how much stock do you put in Sergio Ramos and company and their singing spitefully, particularly about Gerard Pique and about that rivalry? And Francis, I think you and I also disagree about this one as well.
Do we? Well, I don't know.
So I don't think I would say that both of us really don't like it. I think for me, I think that if you're celebrating a trophy, then you don't need to bring up your opponents. I think, for me, if anything, I think it's flattering. For me, I think it'd be flattering for Piqué to hear his name being chanted through the streets of Madrid after Real Madrid won the trophy, simply because it means so much to them to defeat their opponents. And for Piqué, I think it's what we had talked about, where if you're a Barcelona player and you're a Barcelona fan, it should be more about you. It shouldn't be about Real Madrid. It shouldn't be about we won and Real Madrid didn't. It should just be Barcelona won. And so I think for Real Madrid to be singing about Piqué, that tells Barcelona that it means so much to Real Madrid that Barcelona didn't win, that they're almost not celebrating having won it on their own, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the story here is that Madrid players obviously won the league yesterday, which it doesn't sit very well with my stomach, but, you know, we're going to move forward with that. They went to La Cibeles, which is one of the main squares in Madrid, the square in which traditionally Los Blancos fans just go and celebrate and they chant to their own advantage, if you want to call it that. However, they decided to insult Piqué, and they said, Madrid, Piqué, cabrón, salud al campeón, which means Gerard Piqué, say hi to the champions or salute the champions. Now, to be honest, I understand why they've done it. Like, Piqué has been tweeting, talking, and being a nuisance for Madrid the whole season. I think, Piqué is a very clever man. I don't think we can overlook the fact that Piqué has a video games company. He's got a media company. So all of the tweeting and all of the media controversy that he brings, I think it's a very well studied plan for his own benefit. Branding and the fact that if you are doing those sort of things in front of the media, then the Barca fans are going to love you more, which, I think we need someone like that. I don't necessarily think that should be a player. I think that should be either the chairman or someone in the board. Now, would Piqué be annoyed because Ramos insulted him in front of the Madrid fan base? Not really. I think he probably expected that to happen. I don't think we should forget that Samuel Eto'o in 2005 did the same thing the other way around. So Madrid cabron, and everyone in Catalonia thought it was really funny. Me included, I thought it was hilarious. So I think the relationship between Barca and Madrid is based on historical differences, political differences, and it's point blank hate between the two cities, between the two matches, the two teams, sorry. And whenever we play a match, that's visible on the pitch. Now, them celebrating, insulting Barca players, fair enough. In my eyes, they can do what they want. We don't necessarily care. All we should care about is the fact that we didn't win, and that we should have been better against minor teams, as I said earlier in the podcast. If they want to celebrate by insulting us, then that shows they keep thinking about us the whole time. And as I mentioned earlier as well, minor teams think about their rivals when they're celebrating and when they're winning and when they're losing. So I think every team should worry about themselves. If someone like Ramos wants to insult Piqué or Barca in general, then so be it.
Yeah, to me, Francis, this story, as soon as I heard it, to me it was old news. It was over. It's done with now. The celebration is finished, and for Barcelona, it's on to the 2017-2018 season. And that's why you and I are sitting here talking about the transfer window and things like that. I think, the story's over, and on to next season. And speaking of next season, we again want to thank our sponsor, Fubo TV, where you head to Barcablog.com, you hit that little HD streaming link, and you get an exclusive discount to not only watch all the Liga matches at a discounted price, but you're going to be helping us out and helping us continue to make new shows and come up with new ideas and create new content. And going to Fubo TV is a good way to do that, and you do that through our website on Barcablog.com, of course. And you get to see, again, not only the Valencia Villarreals of the day, but you also get to see El Clasico. That's the easiest way, if anything, Francesc, for those in the States or those in Europe who don't necessarily have the channels on cable or things like that where you would normally get El Clasico. Fubo TV is the best way to get El Clasico. And I think at that discounted price, Francesc, to get at least 2 El Clasicos a year, and usually with the Copa del Rey, it's usually more, and even the Champions League is a possibility, it's usually worth it.
Yeah, and I have to admit, I live in London, and I have been living in London for 15 years now. And obviously, I keep in contact with my Barca family through the internet and Skype and bits like that. But I actually watched La Liga and Champions League through the link that I've got from Fubo TV. beIN Sports, you've got obviously the English channel, but if you're Spanish speaking, like I am, you can also watch beIN Sports Eñe, which is the N with a little Spanish hat on top. And it's HD quality. Commentators really do know what they're talking about, which, to be honest, is rare in this day and age. And I think if you can support our show, then go for it. But even if you did it just because you want to watch the best stream available, then it is the right way to go. Plus, we've got a discount exclusive for Barcablog listeners, sorry. And I think last time I checked, it was $6.99 when actually it can cost up to $16.99 without the link. So it definitely is the right thing to do. And I personally have done it, and I've used the link for, I think it's 3 seasons now. So head over and help us out.
Well, one of the things that those who get the Fubo TV link and want to watch Barcelona games can see is our 5th question, and they usually see a Brazilian. And so the question that I'm asking Francesc, and question number 5 as our show is almost ready to wrap up, who is the best Brazilian player in Barca history? And I think there's 8 clear choices. There have been a few more who've played minor roles and played less than 100 matches, but by and large, there are 8 players that stand out to me. And while I think there are easy choices and not so easy choices, I think you and I have debated that it's pretty much come down to Ronaldinho and Dani Alves.
Yes, I think Rivaldo has a shot as well. I'm gonna start with Rivaldo then. I thought Rivaldo was impressive in the seasons that he spent at Barca. He was with us for, I think it was 6 seasons from
97 through 02, yeah.
Yeah, 97 to 02. Made 157 appearances, scored 86 goals, some of them really important in the Champions League. Now, I have picked Rivaldo because I thought that obviously Ronaldinho is the obvious choice. But Rivaldo held the club during a time in which Barca was pretty much going nowhere. We had finished the very successful Johan Cruyff era, although the last couple of years were dodgy. We had Sir Bobby Robson, in charge of the team. And although we were successful and we had Brazilian Ronaldo in there, which probably, had he stayed longer, would be a contender for this list. And so we had a lot of money, and it had to be spent somewhere. Rivaldo was excelling at Deportivo at the time, and he was signed, and he made an instant impact. He lifted that team. Obviously, Luis Enrique was part of that team. And thinking back, it was the Dutch era. So we had Van Gaal as the manager. We had Philippe Cocu. We had Reisiger. We had the De Boer brothers as part of the team. And although it was a team that was quite strong and made the Champions League semi-finals, I think it was in 2002, then Rivaldo was the player that really stood out. He was the one that took responsibility when it really mattered. And I think Rivaldo should be considered in the question of the best Brazilian ever, although Ronaldinho, I think, because of what he meant for the club, should be number 1. But I wanted to mention Rivaldo because of his impact.
Yeah, I think that's the difference, where Rivaldo, 86 goals is the most that a Brazilian player scored for Barcelona. And Rivaldo and Ronaldinho, they both won the Ballon d'Or. And again, so proving themselves to be, for at least a season, the best player in the world. And Ronaldinho, 145 appearances for him, 70 goals. But you also talk about what he meant for the club, and he really did. He was that spark plug. I mean, for me in the United States, Barcelona, when I was younger, it was just another club in the world. But then Ronaldinho comes, and Pep Guardiola and Lionel Messi follow, and really the trio, that chain, almost a chain of events that led Barcelona to where they are today. And Ronaldinho, I think, from a global perspective, was what sparked all that. So what he meant in his, and he only played 6 seasons as well, 03 to 08. And so he did make less appearances than Rivaldo. He had less goals, but he did win the Ballon d'Or. And just what he could do with the ball, it's just what he did was make Barcelona must-watch TV, even when he wasn't scoring goals. Just his tricks and bringing that Jogo Bonito to Barcelona, to the Camp Nou, was just so important. And the other guy, as we had talked about, the guy with the most appearances, Dani Alves, from 2008 to 2016, 247 appearances, so almost 250 appearances, which would be about 100 more than anybody else. He only had 14 goals, but again, you look at this season, and again, not a slight on Sergio Roberto, but you look at what Barcelona is on the right side without Dani Alves, and you clearly see that something is missing this season. And I think at the beginning, I wasn't the biggest Dani Alves fan, but by the end of his time at Barcelona, even I had recognized that, he was so important at allowing Barcelona to play their style.
Yeah, definitely. I think with the Ronaldinho argument, Ronaldinho brought the smile and the confidence back to the Camp Nou. We can't forget that a couple of years earlier, or throughout, I think it was the 5 years prior to Ronaldinho's arrival, Real Madrid had been pretty much excellent. They had the Galacticos, and the Barcelona morale was down, really. And Ronaldinho was the first sort of big, huge superstar at his peak that chose to come to Barca for a very long time. And I think that although his first season, no titles were achieved, he got that belief back in the players. He was top class, and he really pushed everyone else on. I think without Ronaldinho, there wouldn't have been any Messi in the capacity that we know him today. I think his mentoring to Messi was world class. I think Xavi stepped up his game and got bits of Ronaldinho in his own game. Andres Iniesta, I think, is a product of Ronaldinho's influence. So yeah, I think Ronaldinho was very influential, and I would say one of the most important figures in recent Barca history. Then, I'm not going to mention for too long, but then he let himself go, didn't he? And he started partying a little bit too much. He started coming late for training, and that's why he had to go. But I think Ronaldinho, what myself and obviously the Cules fan base keep is all of that energy, all of that belief, all of that euphoria that he brought back to the Catalan capital. And we're really grateful now, and we'll be forever grateful for what he did for the club. Now, in terms of titles, I think Dani Alves has a very strong case to be the best Brazilian in Barca history, simply because he helped us to so many titles. He was a very successful player before getting to us. He had won with Bahia, 3 titles. He won with Sevilla, 5 titles, including 2 UEFA Cups. Barca, I can't even count this in front of me, but there's so many to count. I think it's around 22, 23, including 3 Champions Leagues and 6 leagues. And he has to be in the argument for best Brazilian ever to play at the Camp Nou. Obviously, not an attacking player, not a forward, but an attacking player in terms of freedom, in terms of willingness, in terms of cooperative play. Dani Alves remains the player that has given more goal assists to Messi throughout Messi's career, which is one that Alves has joked is one of his most precious trophies, if you want to call it that. And yeah, Dani Alves was outstanding. Then this season, I'm going to be honest, I am surprised that he's performing at the level that he has been in Juventus, because I thought his last season with Barca was relatively poor. I think that he wasn't getting on with the board too much, and he had that attitude towards the game, and the board and the environment was sort of polluting his game. So I have to admit that when he left on a free, I thought, obviously free is too cheap to sell him on, but I thought that had they gotten 5 or 6, 7 million euros for him, I would have been happy with that. Now I am delighted he's done so well for Juventus, but I am slightly surprised that he has.
Well, Francesc, I think to go back to Ronaldinho real quick, that ovation at the Bernabeu, for me, is a top Barcelona memory, and I think for me, endeared Ronaldinho forever. And to your point for Dani Alves, I agree. I mean, I think while remembering his last season where he just didn't seem to, he just didn't seem to have all the skills he had before. He just seemed to be slowing down. And while I don't want to necessarily remember those things as the same thing with Ronaldinho, honestly, their last few seasons before they left just weren't the same as right in the middle of their Barcelona career, but we can't forget the sheer amount of winning and the sheer amount of success that they had at their peak when they were in a Blaugrana uniform. Just 2 of the all-time best. And I think one guy, of course, everyone's like, well, what about Neymar? What about Neymar? Well, Neymar's already made over 100 appearances for the club, 61 goals, but I think most fans would say that they hope that Neymar winds up being the number 1 when all is said and done, simply because, again, while you can look outside the club, you'd have to say that the heir apparent to Messi is Neymar. So for Neymar, you know that he most likely will wind up, if he continues to stay at the clip he is, he'll wind up being the number 1 goal scorer for all Brazilians playing for the club. And he's still, in his early 20s. So Neymar still has plenty of time left to play in a Barcelona uniform.
Yeah, I think Neymar wasn't even a thought for me when I was looking at the best Brazilian to ever play for Barca, because for me, Neymar is nowhere near the end of his career. What he has achieved so far, I think, and I hope, is going to be a tiny portion of what he will eventually achieve. I think he's got a lot of potential. He's playing alongside the best, in my eyes, the best 2 strikers, forwards, whatever you want to call it, in the world, even playmaker in terms of Messi. He's got Suarez alongside him. He's got a really strong team behind him, and he's got a lot more to give than he has given so far. So in my eyes, Neymar's journey is nowhere near finished, so he shouldn't be in the conversation for this. Now, going back to the very beginning, the reason for me asking this question today is that last week when we did the worst 11, we didn't necessarily leave Brazil in a very good position, because we were talking about Enrique, we were talking about Keirison, we were talking about Douglas, who actually scored a goal for Sporting Gijón this week. I don't know.
Just to spite us.
I know, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. So I think the relationship between Barca and Brazil has been there for many years, and I didn't want to leave it with Douglas being the one Brazilian that we talk about in the podcast, because there have been so many other brilliant Brazilians that have made a difference in the clubs, past, present, and future.
And there was a little of a gap too for Brazilian players making an impact at Barcelona. You look back at the late 50s, early 60s, and Evaristo de Maceda, he was, one of those guys in what you'd say is one of Barcelona's better groups of seasons. It's coming off the 50s where Los Blancos just dominated the 50s, and right at the start of the 60s when Barcelona had a few winning seasons, Macedo, 114 appearances in those 6 seasons, 78 goals, which is a better per goal per game percentage than Neymar has had so far. And he was kind of the pioneer as far as successful Brazilians. And I think any Brazilian list for Barcelona can't have him not on it. And then you look at when Brazilians started coming back to Barcelona, and that starts with Romario, of course, being part of those dream teams from 93 to 95. 46 appearances, 34 goals. Now, that's not a lot, 46 appearances, but yet, 34 goals in that time. That means he only had 12 appearances where he didn't score a goal in a Barcelona, per goal, per game. Of course, he had multiple goals in certain games. And then, not only that, but he's replaced by Ronaldo, who, again, most fans don't think of him too kindly simply because of, the whole Real Madrid thing. But for Ronaldo, and that's the first Ronaldo, 37 appearances, 34 goals for Barcelona. It's just how good could Ronaldo have been if he had stayed with Barcelona?
He would have been brilliant, but then again he didn't. He went to Madrid, so we don't really want to talk about him too much.
And then the final player I'll bring up on this list of successful Brazilian players is Adriano, of course. 114 appearances. He only had 9 goals, but in 114 appearances, Adriano played on the left side at the back, on the right side at the back. He really just was exactly what a winning team needs, a team that wins a treble needs, and he's a guy that could be plugged into the lineup, and you don't really lose that much quality, and he was unselfish enough not to need to be a starter, but he was always seemingly pushing Jordi Alba and pushing Eric Abidal to be that starter. But again, Adriano was just a really good servant for the club, and he's the kind of player that, a utility man, if you will, that helps a winning club.
Yeah, Adriano was a fantastic player for us because of the reasons that you listed. He was always willing to take a step back. He was always willing to take, to leave Alves and the rest of the starting fullbacks in that respect. Take the credit. And he was always ready for his chance. He was a team player, and we will be forever grateful for that. I don't think injuries really respected him, and he would have been even more important had he not been constantly injured, particularly in his last 2-3 seasons. But Adriano was successful with Sevilla before getting to us, and he was a very, very useful player that made an impact.
Well, there you have it. Those are our picks for the best Brazilian player in Barcelona history. Pretty good list, though, Francesc.
Yeah. You're very good at listing players that people wouldn't necessarily think. So I think we may keep you for the 3rd episode, Dan.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Francesc. But you know what? That's the thing, though. If a good way to keep me around, at least, is if everybody just wants to head over to our Patreon page. You can donate to help the show on Barcablog. And that's, again, on our Patreon page. Again, help us making these shows, helping us to make content. And remember, you can also follow the show at facebook.com/Barcablog and youtube.com/Barcablog. Again, those are different ways for you to get involved. Again, we love your questions, your content. Your questions help us move the show forward and give us plenty to talk about each week.
Yeah, definitely. This show obviously is made by us, but if we're the only ones listening to it, then it would be a really boring and really sad state of affairs. We need people to participate, comments. If you can donate, brilliant. If you cannot, just leave the comments. Just show us that you're listening. Just show us that you're interested. Go ahead, disagree with us. We disagree with each other. So having more people disagree with that is not going to be a problem. Our Facebook page is getting more and more engaging, particularly over the last month. Obviously, we got 700,000 followers, but more important than the number of followers is the people that are engaging, interacting. So if you are leaving comments and you are engaging, then obviously we're very grateful to you. If you are not, this is your challenge. That's what you need to be doing, because we want to continue to grow with you, and you're the one that makes the difference. So if you are doing it, thank you. And if you're not, I don't know what you're waiting for.
Well, that'll about wrap it up. And Francesc, as we've agreed to kind of say as each show is now going to end, I'll say Forza Barca, Francesc.
Forza!